Hello, welcome back to Coach's Call. We've got another good friend of mine today with me, Tyler Kettering. Tyler, if you don't mind, we'll jump kind of straight into it. If you can introduce yourself, give us a little bit about yourself, where you're coaching and where you're from, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yep. To introduce myself, my name is Tyler Kettering. I'm an assistant coach at the University of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina, going into my fourth season there this fall, hopefully, as all else, hopefully nothing else fails through. I'm from Ohio originally. I went to school in the Carolinas, and then coached at two other universities before being at South Carolina currently.
Okay. I think we'll dive straight into it, kind of to know a little bit more about you. So, obviously, you're an American guy from Ohio, and you played college soccer over here as well. How was the process for you from going as a non-college player, if you like, to a college player? What was your kind of recruitment process? Did you go through kind of the club system? Was it high school? How was your recruiting process to get yourself into college?
Yeah, I was from a pretty small town, so I had that going against me in a little of a sense. But I was also the youngest of four in my siblings, and all three of my older siblings played collegiate athletics. So my two older sisters played Division I volleyball, and my brother played NAIA basketball. So by the time they got down to me, my parents did. They were pretty knowledgeable about the whole process and the recruitment process and kind of how we would fit in the right schools and in the right environments we were looking for. So I had that advantage, but it was still a jump. My high school, small Christian school in Xenia, Ohio, I had 52 in my graduating class, and so I was looking for something similar, something in a same size scope. So no, I wasn't looking for a big state school, so that kind of narrowed it down. I wanted a good faith based education, and so I actually settled on Gardner Webb University in Boiling Springs, North Carolina. And Boiling Springs was or Gardner Webb was a very small Division I school down there as well, and so it allowed my transition to allowed me to ease kind of into that transition a little bit better had I probably gone to a much larger state school, for sure.
Do you think there was anything specifically, or any tournament specifically you played in, that kind of enabled you to end up at Gardner Webb, or do you think it was just kind of one of them things that just kind of happened and it fit perfectly for you? But is there anything you think you've done that kind of led you to go there?
Yeah, no, it was definitely stuff that we did as a family. What I did as an athlete, it wasn't any of the showcases. I wasn't seen live by any of the coaches that were actually recruiting me, because I was in such a small environment. And my club system at the time was I played a year or two. I played about 3 years of club soccer outside of high school, and so. Those clubs aren't even in existence anymore. they're so small. One is still in existence. The other one kind of changed. I think it's Ohio Galaxies now, and so it's definitely changed. But I was not seen live by any coaches. I had to do a little bit more legwork. I had to create film, send out highlights, send out full game film, and I did the camp gamut. I went to a ton of schools that I was interested in, and I five went about five schools that I narrowed it down to that I thought would be a really good fit for me. And I went to all their camps. And so that's really where I got into kind of the relationship with all those coaches, and kind of figured out where Gardner Webb was the only school that I didn't actually go to their camp. I visited, and had a good relationship with them, but that was the one school I actually didn't go to their camp, and was recruited by as well. So it was mainly done off of film, to be honest.
Okay, so you kind of ended up at Gardner Webb, one way or another, and what were your kind of expectations going in as a freshman? Obviously, moving away from home a little bit to South Carolina and North Carolina, sorry. And
Mhm.
what were you kind of expecting as a freshman, and were there any kind of challenges for you when you did get there? Was it something that you had to adjust to, or was it pretty easy for you to kind of
Yes,
get?
the school itself, was going through transition from Division II to Division I. They had a pretty successful Division II stint, and they were making the jump to Division I. So my freshman year would have been their second year, roughly, at a full-fledged Division I schedule. And so that was kind of the challenge. We were a brand new Division I program that the year before didn't have any wins on the schedule. So they went 0-16-4 before my freshman year. So that was kind of the challenge there. There were some players, there was a lot of new players, a lot of freshmen, a lot of transfers. And then there were some players that had gone through the transition period. So these players had been used to a pretty strong deep run in Division II. And then they went through the transition phase. So they had like 2 really bad years. And it was kind of like, they got about one, maybe 2 years left to make a run or do something with this program and to finish their career. And so there was a lot of emotions. You had a lot of guys trying to prove themselves as freshmen, such as myself. And then you had some seniors that were just like, all right, well, we went through this transition. It wasn't our decision, but we went through it. And so now we got to go up against some big schools and try to get some results out of it. And then by the time, so that was my freshman year, and it was exciting. Obviously, it was new, to say the least, but it was also just a fresh opportunity. I think I came in with 4 freshman goalkeepers. There were no returning goalkeepers when I was a freshman, and so it was just a true dogfight. It was who was going to take the position. There's no presumption about it. It's just, you're all freshmen who can acclimate, who can get the job done.
Okay, I know you had a pretty good career at Gardner Webb. Would you say it was an overall kind of good decision and a good experience for yourself there?
Yeah, I think at the time for me, it was, for what I knew about college and everything else. When you always look back at things, would I change it for where I am right now? I might make some different decisions, but if I were to go back in that same thing, there was nothing in that moment that I was there and said, oh, I should do this. I shouldn't have done this. There was absolutely no regrets. I know a lot more now, and so I might change a little bit of what I did. But if I mean, 18-year-old me again, back in 2003, I'd make the same decision again, 100%.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously after your career at Gardner Webb, with you being so successful, what kind of happened for you after college? I know most guys, when they do play in the Division I level, they all kind of think, I'm going pro, I'm going to play in the MLS or at least the USL. What was kind of the process for you after you graduated?
Yeah, so really the process that got me to college is the process that I had to replicate again to get into the pros. I was from a very small school again. We had some success in my final senior year, tournament run, everything else like that. But still, I didn't have the body of work over 4 years in a big conference to allow a professional program to take note of me and say, yeah, this kid can get it done. So what I had to do is I had to go on trials. I had to go to combines. I had to go to showcases and prove myself in person the same way I kind of did coming out of high school and into college. And so that's what I did again. I went to 2 different combines. I milled around at some trials, week trials, weekend trials, all over the Southeast, in Atlanta, Charleston, Wilmington, Charlotte, all over the place. And so, and then finally settled into the Hammerheads for my first professional contract in Wilmington. But it was kind of the same thing. I had to go through that gamut all over again. Nobody was just going to pick me out based off of all the goalkeepers in the country, and just because you could get a kid like me who had been at a bigger program and closer to a sure thing. So I had to go out and prove myself all over again. But that was the process of what I wanted to have happen, and I had no problem backing myself in those situations.
Yeah, so of course, you're probably one of the smaller percentage of guys that actually are able to, go professional after college. Do you think there was a big difference in the level competing in college to competing for the Hammerheads in the professional leagues, or do you think it was similar?
Yeah, no, it's a subtle difference. You might not see it, and I think this is why a lot of athletes have a hard time seeing it, and a lot of fans and parents have a hard time noticing it. But when you actually get out into training and the way guys are passing the ball, the way guys are moving, everything is just ramped up, and probably more so for me the transition, because like I said, a guy at a top program in the country making a jump to a USL program might not have been that different, depending on what program it was. But for me, in the program that I did, it was a jump, and so I had to acclimate pretty quickly. So yeah, it's a definite difference, but it's not just the physical. The technical demands of the understanding. It's just the maturity of the players and how they go about what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That first year was a big learning. I mean, you're supposed to be an adult, and you could be playing with. I played with a guy, George Corey, who he'd get to practice when he could, and he'd been playing for the Hammerheads for maybe eight years or so. But he was a welder. The guy was a man.
Yeah.
He was an adult, and I was still a kid coming out of college. And so if you can really pick up on those things, and if you have an open mind of when you're going in, not just like, oh, I'm going to take this this league by storm and I'm going to show this. But if you go in there really with the right mindset of I'm going to learn from these guys, and I don't want to just get into the pros. Like I wanted to make a career of it.
Yeah.
And so the career is a long process.
Yeah, I think a lot of people misjudge that as well, because once you're there, it's still a grind. It's not.
Oh yeah.
Don't sign that contract and you've made it. It's still a grind. No. So I did this kind of same thing myself. A lot of my friends went trials and stuff when we got done, and like it's completely different to what you think it's going to be, because you get offered a contract and you're like, maybe you're making $200 a week or something like that. You're thinking, I'm a professional,
right?
I'm making less than my little sister who's working in a library or something.
Yeah,
that's kind of the reality of it that a lot of people miss out on.
That's the majority percentage. I mean, 10% of college athletes go on to play professionally, and of that 10%, you might be looking at 1% actually are making a sustainable lifestyle out of it.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing, but it's not a one and then you've made it, you've signed, and you're good for life. It's a continual. I have to continually prove myself again, and then the next year again and again and again, because every professional program is like this.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if it's football, it's baseball, because there's another young crop of kids coming up that are trying to take the spot that you've held on to. And so, that's essentially how my career ended. A younger player came along and was fresh out of college and a little bit more adept to what the coach wanted, and then I had to move on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not like you said, you're not just set for life. You don't just sign on the dotted line once and you go. You got to show up every single day. We've kind of adapted something in South Carolina we took from our football program, but every day is a job interview, essentially. And so we tell our kids that is every day you have a job interview. What are you going to do today to set yourself apart from the rest of the field? Set yourself apart maybe from your teammates, but then even all the recruits that we look at on a daily basis. And so every day you have to look at it as a job interview. If you don't, someone's going to come up right behind you and take your spot.
Yeah. So you kind of bridged the gap a little bit there, saying, the younger guy came up and kind of basically took your spot, and that kind of ended your career a little bit. I'm guessing that's kind of when you reached over and started to think about coaching, and I guess started your coaching career. So how did that kind of come around for you?
Yeah, so my second year playing, I was actually in Chicago with the Fire after the Hammerheads, and spent the entire season with them, and then was going into preseason and just got beat out by a college kid coming in. They dissolved the developmental league in my second year, so they cut a bunch of roster spots down, so they weren't carrying 3-4 goalkeepers. They were carrying 3 goalkeepers, but majority were rosters were carrying maybe 2 and then a practice kid, stuff like that. So it wasn't really a sustainable lifestyle for me with a family and a baby on the way. It just wasn't. So I'd always wanted to get into college coaching. It just came a little bit sooner than I had expected. But that was the goal. It was to play and then to coach after that and glean as much information along the way as I could take. So that's when, at the same time, I got released from Chicago. The assistant position came open at Gardner-Webb. Within 2 weeks at the exact same time. And it was just a call up to my former coach, who's a good friend, Tony Setzer. And I said, hey, listen, if you're looking for the assistant, I'm looking for a job.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of went from there. And it was a really good position for me for a long time, almost 8 years. And I learned so much in those 8 years. And I mean, you're still learning. I mean, 10 years down the line, you're still learning a ton of information because it's not one. The years are not cookie cutter. They're always changing. So that was kind of my transition. Was right into it. And I was still working in my undergrad at the time, because when I did leave to go play for Chicago, I still had 12 hours of classwork left and a 300-hour internship left to fulfill to get my degree. So when I came back, I had to mix a little bit of coaching and back in the classroom again.
Yeah, so kind of similar to what a lot of boys that do the GA route did in a way. Because you were in classes, but you were still a full-time coach. So juggling both at the same time, I guess, in your first year.
Yep.
So what kind of journey did you go on? Obviously, you started at Gardner-Webb. Now you're at USC. How did you kind of go from there to there?
So, I grew up. At Gardner-Webb, I think we played South Carolina maybe one or twice during my time there. And so it was kind of in region to be there. I spent a season at the University of Dayton, which Dayton is hometown. Yeah. And it's really funny about coaching is you can sometimes set your course and you say, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. But the majority of the time things come up. And it's not I wasn't really expecting Dayton. I wasn't really pursuing things. It was an opening, and it was like, well, hey, I'll take a look at this and see what happens. And it was a really good fit. And then while I was there, Coach Burson down in South Carolina called me. He said, hey, I got an opening. Would you be interested? It wasn't something I was looking for, but it was something that was brought to my attention. And then it was like, well, it's a region of the area that we love. We love the Carolinas. My wife lived in the same town that we're living in right now for a year, almost 10, 12 years ago. And so it was something that it was kind of like, well, it's a really good school, a great coach to be under, after being under a great coach at the University of Dayton, Dennis Currier up there. So my process of going from position to position to position was, okay, what coaches can I, really learn from in those instances? And all the coaches that I've been a part of, Tony and Coach Curry and Coach Burson, they've all got 20 plus careers in the Division I game. And so it's just a really good opportunity to, okay, well, is this good for my family? One. And then is this good for my career and my education as a coach? Two. And on all three answers were yes. And that's how I ended up, settling down here.
Yeah. I mean, I've been there myself and seen the school. South Carolina is a massive school. It's a very big school. Like you said, the facilities are kind of unbelievable down there.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the main thing that maybe makes them stand out compared to some of the smaller kind of Division I schools? Is it mainly facilities and what they have to kind of offer the players that is the difference?
Well, I think that always is the front line.
Yeah.
It's the Coach Burson has it that passes the eye test.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you see. There's no question about it. It's the first thing you see. But then you got to see what's the substance underneath. And the athletic program, the university itself, and the coaches we have that work in really close relationship with us and Coach Burson and Coach Cook, the other assistant. That's the substance.
Yeah.
You know, it looks good on the outside, but it's not just a facade. You look at, you know, what we do, how we treat the guys, how the players respond to us as coaches, what the identity we're trying to continue to formulate out through. And you know what? It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You can look at facilities are great. Facilities are for everybody. That's one thing. But our coaching style isn't for everybody. And so that's where a lot of kids can get wrapped up into it. They see like a really nice field, and they see a weight room, they see a soccer ops building, and they go look at it and they go, wow, yeah, this is for me. And they forget, okay, how does the coach play? How does the coach coach? How does the team play? What are the guys on the team like? You know, you forget about all those things, and you're like, yeah, I'm sure that's good, but look at it. And they just get wrapped up in a lot of the wrong things. And so the facilities are for everybody. That there's no question about that. But we have a very select group of guys of who we feel, and all of our guys are great. The way they interact with each other and the way they communicate and their unity, and you ask them about it, and they're just like, yeah, it's really cool. He was really fortunate. And we look at each other like, it's not fortunate, man. We recruited you. We knew your personality. We knew his personality. We knew you guys would get along. Yeah. So it wasn't. It was very intentional of what we were doing. So that's going to be the deeper lying success. Is that core of what the staff has been doing, and Coach Burson's unprecedented career in Division I. He's laid that foundation.
Yeah, so that kind of breaches into what I was going to bring up next. So, like, obviously we've seen each other out on recruiting trails and stuff like that. So, like, when you go out as the assistant coach for University of South Carolina, what are you looking for in a recruit when you're watching games? I know a lot of coaches look for different things, and is there anything specifically that Tyler Kettering is looking for when he goes out to look for a recruit that makes a player maybe stand out more than others?
Yeah, I want to see an impactful player. I want to see a player, and some people that it can be blurred, the lines between like impactful and successful. That you should go out there in your craft. I mean, if you're at a top event, you should be on a team, and you should have a role to fill, and that role should be filled successfully or impactfully. If we're not seeing that out of you in an environment that you're really comfortable in, you being one of the oldest players in your age group or club that you've been playing with for a year, there's something that's a little off. So I want to go out and see a player that's not just, you might be completing every pass, but what's the impact of those passes? Mm-hmm. Is it just to maintain possession, or are you breaking lines? Those are the things that we're looking for in a player, depending on the position you're supposed to play in. If you're a center back, is your back line in order? Are you impactful in your back line, or are you just one of those guys in your back line?
Yeah.
That just does something. But it also depends on what we're looking for. If we've already got a really vocal leader and a guy doing this, we might need a good soldier next to him. That's what we might need. But if we graduate out a guy who was our vocal leader in a back line, we need to replace that. So what we look for in players changes so much based off of what we have or where we want to go with a position. And so it's the biggest thing we tell our guys that we go out and look for is I don't like to tell kids that we're usually coming to watch them because I want to see who they truly are without the influence of, this coach is coming to watch me. I'm going to start doing this because maybe I came to watch a kid not do that. Maybe I wanted an outside back who is just a staunch 1v1 defender, and I didn't want him getting up and down the sideline. And he found out I was coming. He goes, I want to show coach, how much the attack I can get involved into. And now I don't know what's real. I don't want that. And he maybe neglects his responsibilities as a 1v1 defender. So it's just kind of being true to the kids. Got to be true to who they are, what they're what's the one thing that they do, and can you do it really well to help the team win? And that's really big for us. And so that's where I say the impact. I got to go out there and watch you, and I got to say, okay, he's a defender, and he had a positive impact in the defense structure of that team. He's a midfielder. He was able to solidify the balance of that midfield by what he did, not just by standing out there. But actually, the things that he did, he was able to solidify the balance of that central midfield. And as an attacker, what's your responsibility? Can you be involved in goals? Some strikers there was like, I got to score goals. No, we just need you involved in goals.
Yeah.
If you're leading in assists or scoring goals, you're involved. If you got 5 and 5, you're involved in 10 goals. That's great. That's great. That's what we want to see. So your impact in the game is what we look for.
Yeah. So a lot of it is kind of situational, I guess, depending on, what situation you're in with your program and what you're looking for here. So a lot of questions that kind of come in is specific kind of tournament. So you don't really target, or do you target kind of specific tournaments that you would go and watch? I know obviously the local ones are obviously easier for every program. But is there any that you would say, we heavily go to these tournaments to recruit, and it's good to be involved in them?
Well, I think you go to tournaments because it increases your chances to see that player. You don't go to those tournaments because this tournament has more attacking right backs than another tournament, or this tournament has more of a true number 6. True number 6s are produced out of this tournament. They're not. That's not the way it's not the way it happens. It's more so the clubs. Some club coaches are either the more defensive structure, they're more attack minding. So you can get those out of. You can say like, okay, well, I know if I need a center back, this club usually produces really good center backs. So where is this club? Where are they going to be? And so you would go and watch that team. So it's a little bit more condensed, focused down now. And it's all varied on what kind of school you're at, but we have a little bit more narrowed focus in our recruiting. So it's not necessarily just you're going to go to the biggest showcase and then broad picture. It's like I need a right back. I need a left back. So those are the things that I'm going to look for, and it's not necessarily okay, where can I go find the most left backs, but it's using my connections as a coach and talking to other club coaches and stuff like that and saying, okay, what are some players that you've seen? And I'll do this quite a bit. And I've even done it with you in recruiting in JUCO kids was, okay, I need an attacker. And you're like, nah, I don't have that position for you. And I'll ask you, okay, who was the best attacker you played against? And you're like, oh yeah, so-and-so. Well, that speaks volumes to me because you don't have a dog in that fight. And that's just an unbiased opinion. And so what am I going to do? Now I'm going to go look at that kid. And so it's not necessarily about it. It all depends on kind of the athlete and kind of where they are. Yeah, you want to get seen by a lot, but that can also muddy the waters and decisions because you could have a school hunting you and you might not be right for them. And so it is a little bit different. The recruiting process is so layered based on the individual and based on the coaches and finding that right fit. We do go out to a lot of the big showcases. We'll go out to San Diego. We'll go out to DA showcases in Florida. We'll hit a lot of the ECNL events. We'll hit a lot of those because we'll go to those events not because of the size of the events, is because we've already started to track down certain individuals who we feel could fit our program really well. So I'm at that event, not just walking by aimlessly fields and like, oh, I'll stop here. These kids look athletic or these kids look talented. No, if I'm at a field, it's because I'm watching already a specific individual, or I have communicated with that coach before and he says, hey, you need to come take a look at my team. I got a lot of players that you might really be interested in. I think would fit the style of players you guys are looking for in South Carolina. And so there's a little bit more in depth to it. Rarely, you're just not going to find a coach who's going to sit down, just plop down at a field and go, oh, who's playing here? They're going to know why they're there. But that ranges over the divisions as well. I mean, if it's a numbers game you're looking for, you're going to find a lot of coaches doing some different things. Yeah,
for sure. I think recruiting is definitely a tricky kind of area, not just for coaches, for players. It's tricky. Figure out the best way to go about it. Even for myself, coming out of JUCO, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was just talking to everyone and anyone I could, and kind of talking to you as well, of course.
Yeah, you almost ended up at Gardner Webb.
Yeah, I know. And I honestly didn't have a clue, and I'd been playing in college for 2 years. So it was, I think it's one of them kind of grey areas in the game where a lot of people are scrambling around and it's kind of frantic a little bit. And for me, the ones that do well is the ones that kind of relax a little bit and kind of get it under control.
Well, and this is my biggest advice when it comes to recruiting for on the family or the player side is your path is your own. Your time frame is your own. Don't get caught looking up into, oh, I've got a teammate who's done this and he's doing this. And I had these other guys that came through my high school and they went on and did this. No, that's not you. It might be you. That might be your path, and that's okay. But it might not be. And that has to be okay as well, because too many parents force the issue. Too many kids force the issue. And then they end up in bad situations. And then they try to fix it again. And they go, oh, well, it was something else's fault. It was just call it what it was. It was a bad decision. Maybe the coach's style wasn't right for you, or the level was wrong for you. And now you try to say, well, no, I'm a Division I athlete, so I'm going to go to another Division I program. And you don't do anything there either. You don't make the field. You don't, and then you end up quitting soccer, or you end up dropping out of college because you chose a school where the academics were way too high for you, and that's not good. And so your path is your own as an individual or as a family.
Yeah,
it might be right financially for you and your family to be at this one institution, and then maybe grow forward from there. But too many kids get caught up into the game of just looking outside of their family or outside themselves of what their friends have done or players that have come before them, or I'm a part of this program, I have to go this direction. It's terrible. It's terrible. Parents waste a lot of money on it, and kids waste a lot of time and energy on it. And all you're left spent is just trying to be successful instead of just trying to grow as an athlete and an individual.
Yeah, I think I even saw that myself, when I was a JUCO coach for the last couple of years. We had obviously a lot of success sending boys on to some good schools. And I think it kind of clouded the judgment of a lot of the other guys, because they were seeing their teammates, like, oh, he got a full scholarship to Division I. I play on the same team as him. I should be playing Division I. And the reality of it is, like you said, everyone's journey is kind of different, and it's more about the fit rather than, of course, everyone ideally would go and play at a top Division I school, and that's great to have dreams. But I think at some point you've got to kind of know what is the best for you, because everyone is different, like you said. So I think the point you brought up about making it a different journey from your friends is massive, because a lot of kids kind of get caught up in that.
It's more than a lot, almost everybody.
Yeah, it's tough. Okay, before we kind of wrap it up, I think what we'll do is, if you've got any kind of advice for any younger coaches, if you like, coming up, not saying you're old, but you're a little bit older than me. But if you've got any advice for any guys that's kind of thinking about getting into coaching, have kind of took a jump into it, what would you say to maybe a young Tyler Kettering when he first started coaching? What kind of tips would you give if you could?
Yeah, I mean, coaching is if you look at it outside of yourself, if you look at it to make yourself successful, it'll be a big struggle. In my opinion, this is my platform here. You asked me, so you're going to get my opinion. But if you go into it with the mindset of how can I help other individuals, you'll end up finding yourself more successful than you ever thought possible. And that's the biggest thing. If you get into this game thinking, I'm going to make a lot of money and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this, you're going to really struggle. But if you go to look back and say, man, this is the game that I loved growing up, and, to be an impactful coach and to be a mentor to young men going and, finishing college and going into the real world, providing a good life for your family. If you go into it with those goals in mind, how can I influence the people around me and my community around myself? You'll end up having a pretty fulfilling career. And because that's not the end all goal, it's a byproduct of it. Success is a byproduct of all the positive things that you do in your life. And so that's a big thing when it comes into it, is the reasons why you do certain things.
Yeah.
And next, I think what you're doing right here is for a coach is you can never stop learning, and your theories and your identity can never stop evolving as the game evolves, as the players evolve. When I was playing, when you were playing, is not how coaches coach now. It's not how players learn now. There's so many different avenues of teaching that coaches can utilize right now, and keeping an open mind into that. I think there are some coaches that are very staunch in what they do, and there's some core values that I think are really good to maintain with that. But then everything else that's a little bit extraneous, be a little fluid in your coaching career, in your coaching education, because it'll only the larger your foundation is, broader in your education, just it's a great foundation, and it just is great, something great to build on the longer you're in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is a very, very fulfilling career if you do it the right way. Unfortunately, not everyone does do it the right way, but if you do, I think it brings a lot of joy, if you like, that maybe you do miss from your days and stuff. So it definitely has a very positive influence on myself anyway. So
Yeah.
well, I appreciate you coming on. You know, it's been
Yeah.
35 minutes or so, so I think it's been a good chat for some people to have a watch and hopefully learn something from. And you know, hopefully you guys have a really good season. If the season does go ahead, fingers crossed. And I'm sure we'll be in touch, and I'll be watching anyway. So
Yeah, absolutely, my pleasure. And I mean, to everyone who tunes in during this time frame, continue. You guys are doing education right now.
yep.
If you're a coach, if you're a recruiter, if you're a family, this is what it's all about. Especially during this time where you can't actually get out and do the physical component of making yourself better. You can always make yourself better here.
Yep, for sure. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it, and we'll be in touch soon. And thanks again for coming on.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dean.
No problem. Thank you.
Bye.